Morning. We'll call the meeting to order. MPC. Is there any addition to the agenda? If not,
move the agenda.
Ben has moved the agenda. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. And approval of the March 13th, 2018 MPC minutes.
I'll move.
Jason's moved. Is there any questions or concerns? All in favor? Carried. And we'll start with our development permit applications. We'll start with file number DP 2016-170. Good morning. Whenever you're ready, Susan.
Okay, so just a little bit of a clarification before I start. So the RFD here is referring to an original DP which was approved in 2016, which is 2016-170. And then following is the original DP report. And what was missing was the revised site plan, which is what we're here to decide today. So the original application came to MPC, and now the applicant wants to revise the site plan, so it had to come back to MPC. But we are not actually going to make a decision on the application again, just on the revised site plan. So it didn't end up in the agenda package, so that's why I've printed it off and given each of you a copy. But I'll bring it up here for everybody to see. So as I've said, the original permit was approved in January 17, 2017, but there is a bit of an issue with the access to the site. So the applicant would like to reconfigure the site plan. So the original site plan shows the access on the west side here, or the east side, sorry, and coming down into the facility over here. And they would like to reconfigure so that the access starts more in the middle of the parcel and goes over here, and they are going to not use this access because they're having issues. There's an easement. I'll show you an aerial photo. So it's in the Wheatland Industrial Park, and this is the parcel here. So as you can see, there is this driveway that goes down to a parcel here in the south. And there is an easement, but there is an issue with using that access. So the applicant, as you can see here from this aerial photo, there is an existing approach here already, and they are proposing to utilize it and build a new driveway to the facility. So the drawings for the building itself have not changed. Everything is the same. It's just the location of the access kind of made them reconfigure their site plan somewhat, and so it had to come back for approval. So that's what we're deciding today. And so the options are for MPC to approve the revised site plan for DP 2016-170, a medical marijuana production facility to be located at Plan 101-1307, Block 3, Lot 9, Northeast 7, 2426. Or MPC can refuse the revised site plan with reasons given or provide an alternative recommendation of MPC's choosing. And it is staff's recommendation that the revised site plan be approved. Thank you. That's everything.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
I have one question, and it's mostly because I wasn't here when they approved it in the first place. Is this a direct control? Is that why it's coming back to us for this change? Because to me, it doesn't seem. It states it's still within the plan of the. There's no change to the structure. Why would it have to come back to us just for an approach?
If it was direct control, it would be coming back to council, but you guys are acting as MPC today. So this is an industrial general district, and in our land use bylaw, it says that MPC is the approving authority, and any changes to an application have to come back to MPC. So since MPC approved it to begin with, I was not authorized to approve the change. I would have, if I would have been authorized, I would have approved it.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
I move that we, I apologize. I move that we take the staff recommendation, option one, approve the revised site plan for DP 2016-170, a facility to be located at Plan 101, 1307, Block 3, Lot 9, Northeast, 72426, west of the 4th.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or concerns? All in favor? Carried. And we'll go to file number DP 2017-115. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, good morning, MPC. Just before I start, I did want MPC to know that the applicant and landowners are here in the audience, and they do have a presentation. So if MPC is wanting to hear from them through the presentation, they are ready and available to do so.
The applicant has a presentation?
Yes, that's correct. So this is a development permit, DP 2017-115. It is a discretionary use application for Campground Major in the Parks and Recreation District of the Land Use Bylaw. The parcel is located in Subdivision 5 and 6 within Southwest 33, 22, 25 west of the 4 and just north of Carseland. At this time, staff is recommending that MPC choose option 1 for approval of DP 2017-115, subject. Oh, sorry. Let's see about turning volume up. So staff are recommending approval for DP 2017-115 as Campground Major, subject to the conditions in Appendix 5 of the Development Permit Report. So for this application, there is quite a bit of history to it. The original campground itself was called Calderon Acres, and it received a development permit in 1979 for 180 campsites. When ownership changed in January 2017 of last year, the name changed to Oasis Grove, which it currently has. And the new owners were made aware of additional campsites that were added to the campground without a permit, up to 266 in total. With that, they came to the county and requested not only a development permit to accommodate these additional 86 campsites from the original 180, but to also add an additional 64 campsites to the property. At the time the application was submitted, it was originally intended that these 64, well, originally 54, were to be along the border of the existing campground. However, later in the application process, they came back with a new site plan and not only added on an additional 10 to make 64 new campsites, but moved it to the existing golf course that's on the property. As a result, staff were required to do a review of these sites because they had moved, and we requested a number of studies. We requested a transportation impact assessment, a landscape plan, a stormwater management plan, a septic and utilities plan to show where the septic and water lines were to be placed within the sites for just the 64. And through that peer review, we sent it off and received comments back from it, which is detailed in the report. During that time, development did start on the site, and so we addressed it through enforcement. And since then, we have adopted the application itself for the conditions to meet the requirements of the plans that were submitted. So the studies and reports, the TIA, et cetera. Further to that, we also received concerns from the applicants regarding the water on the site. Currently, there are 2 existing water wells. They are not commercially licensed yet, but they have been monitored by Alberta Health Services at this time. Alberta Environment has not taken over that. So Alberta Health Services is monitoring and testing the current water wells and water servicing for the campsites that are currently existing. The proposal was to have the 64 campsites use a new water well that would be drilled after the application process. Unfortunately, they do have concerns that this new well will not be done in time for their new season. As a result, they have requested that a permanent solution is allowed for the site. At this time, staff are holding to our existing conditions to request a pre-release condition that the water well itself is licensed and approved by Alberta Environment before we release the development permit. With that being said, there are a number of pre-release conditions for this application to ensure that we have all the information necessary before we release the permit. The pre-release conditions are intended to prevent the issuance of the permit, even if approval is given, so that we have all the information before we hand it out to them. Then there are additional conditions afterwards that they would be required to follow as a campground to follow provincial and municipal regulations that we have here at the county. With that in mind, as I mentioned, staff is sticking to the condition to have the water well license prior to release of the permit. However, MPC does have the option if they want to change this or adopt the conditions if they feel it is necessary to allow for a temporary water servicing option for the campsites. And this is strictly referring just to the 64 campsites. The existing water well itself for the existing campsites would still be used. Just as a summary for some of the findings within the reports, the Transportation Impact Assessment looked at Highways 901 and 817, as well as Range Road 254 and 230. There is a recommendation from this report that the speed limit be reduced to 60 kilometers along the link from Range Road 254, as well as appropriate tapering on the road on Highway 817 and Township Road 230. Again, this is conditioned that the campground landowner is required to meet these requirements and recommendations from the report. It is also within a development agreement that they are required to sign and commit to in order to meet the requirements of the TIA, the stormwater, the servicing, and the landscape plan that was submitted for this application. Further to that, there is also a dust abatement condition, which is requiring that the landowner sign an agreement with Public Works in order to ensure that dust abatement along Range Road 254 and Township Road 230 is established for the campground to reduce dust control. The septic servicing report was also requested, and the final plans are conditioned to show more detail and to ensure that the slope and other requirements are met as per the engineers, and that would include detailed drawings for the proposed site. At the time that the original application came in, there was no request initially for a septic report for the entirety of the campsite. So that includes the 180 existing plus the additional 86 campsites that were added after the original development permit. Because we were not asking for that report in the initial stages of this application. When the revision to the site plan was done for the 64 sites to move them into the golf course was submitted to us later at the application stage, we were only able to request reports for those specific 64 sites. We required legal counsel, and they advised us that unfortunately we had not been able to ask for them at the beginning stages, and we couldn't ask for them afterwards unless these 64 sites would impact the rest of the sites that were existing. So at this time, we deemed it necessary to ensure that any of the reports we requested ensure that these 64 sites were not only to be supported by the land there, but were also serviced properly and would have proper grading and stormwater management. Other than that, if MPC has any questions in regards to the application or the details of it, I will do my best to answer any questions. For MPC, you have several options. Option 1 is to approve DP 2017-115, a discretionary use development permit application for Campground Major located in Subdivision 5 and 6, Southwest 332225, subject to the conditions in Appendix A of the DP report. Option 2 is to refuse the application with reasons given, or Option 3, provide an alternative recommendation of MPC's choosing. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions right now for staff? If not, I'll entertain a presentation from the developers. Is it? Okay. Applicant, I guess, not the developer. Turn the mic on. Thank you.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jocelyn Appleby. I'm with Civic Works Planning and Design. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you today. I am the applicant along with the landowners on this file, so the Oasis Grove Golf and RV Resort. I won't go too much into detail of the application history as Ms. Cohen has already done that for you today. But essentially, the campground is a long-standing use, and it's also a largely seasonal use, originally established in 1973 and acquired by the current landowners in January of 2017. So the landowners immediately initiated due diligence and were informed at that time by the county to actually apply for a land use redesignation. In the summer of 2017, oh, that's not for the galley, that's for MPC, yeah.
What's that?
And so then it was decided actually in summer of 2017 that a land use redesignation was not required, and then at that time they proceeded with a major development permit application. And so throughout the initial communication with the county, various application requirements were outlined, including various pre-development studies and also some compliance issues on site that required attention. In particular, there's some decks and structures on the existing lots that don't meet the land use bylaw requirements. The landowners at this time also undertook a full cleanup of the site, including an unsightly junkyard area that was adjacent to Range Road 254. So Civic Works came on board in August 2017, and at that time our goal was to make an application in early September in order to meet timelines for an MPC date prior to the election break in October. We did not make that date, and then we're pushed to November 21st MPC date. In November, the application was, as Odessa mentioned, recirculated due to the relocation of the proposed additional lots. Those additional sites were always contemplated in the original application. However, we updated the location of them. So in December, additional pre-development studies were then requested prior to a recommendation from planning. So all in all, this process we're certainly at MPC later than we originally anticipated, in the hopes of accommodating a summer 2018 opening for the proposed 64 sites. I would say that we're about 7 months behind due to the various project changes that have happened throughout this process. This is an overall site plan of Oasis Grove, and I won't take too much of your time, but I'll quickly run through it because it certainly helps in understanding the application. This is the existing entrance located right here, and then the exit is located here. This is where the existing lots are located. There's quite a lot of vegetation. It's not showing on this map, just for ease of and legibility. The existing 9-hole golf course is located here on the east side of the site, and the proposed expansion for the 64 lots is located here. Throughout this process, we've also established an emergency egress that would be located right here, so through the existing storage yard, and that would only be used in an emergency scenario. There's also a new clubhouse that's been built located right here. And this is just a detail of the lot plan, and we can certainly come back to that if there's any questions. So as was mentioned, there's 2 existing wells on site. They supply potable water to the existing sites through a water line, and then there's a second well that services the clubhouse. Lots are individually pumped out by an on-site truck and then are disposed of at the on-site sanitary dump, and the sanitary dump station is pumped out weekly. As for irrigation on the existing lots, there's a shared irrigation line that goes to clusters of 4 lots, and it's used solely for landscaping purposes. Potable water is not available during the winter months. Non-potable water is available in the clubhouse for washroom and shower use only. And on our proposed 64 sites, we are proposing that a new well be drilled to distribute potable water through a water line, and this is, of course, pending commercial water license approval. For sanitary, a self-contained system with piping to each lot, and there would be two holding tanks, which would be pumped out weekly or as required. There's an existing irrigation line that was used for the golf course that would be utilized. And then just in terms of safety, a combination of nets and landscaping would provide a barrier to the golf course. I'd like to take the opportunity to just run through some of the benefits of Oasis Grove. As I mentioned, it is a long-standing use. It's been around for quite a while. Provides tourism development and encourages users from all areas to experience the unique beauty of the site and of Wheatland County. It also directly supports quite a lot of local businesses through contract work, and I've listed them here, but I won't read them all out. Employs residents of Wheatland County and also supports direct visitor spending in the county. In terms of social benefits, there is a new clubhouse on site. It does have the opportunity to be used for community space, for rental opportunities or special events. They're known for their top-notch management and quality service, and Oasis Grove is really a community within itself. Residents actually purchase into a 35-year lease term, so there is quite a strong sense of community there. For recreational benefits, it's planned that the 9-hole golf course will actually be open to the public this year. And as for infrastructure, as was mentioned in the staff report, intersection upgrades are going to be required at Range Road 254 and Highway 901 as a result of this application. And then the speed limit will be reduced on that stretch of Range Road 254. So as was alluded to in staff's report, the pre-release condition for the commercial water licensing is problematic for this application. So we are proposing a discussion with MPC today to amend the following condition. The applicant shall submit a new water well license from AEP to service the additional 64 campsites to Wheatland County. We wish to request that the pre-release condition be amended to allow the owners to implement an interim solution that can properly service the sites with potable water until a decision is made by AEP. We wish to propose that the developer could also post an LOC for the water installation, treatment, and distribution under an approved commercial water license, and this be written into our development agreement. This would ensure that a long-term water solution is achieved with no liability or added expense to the county, while still allowing the operator to do business and open the 64 sites this summer. The biggest concern here, as I'm sure everyone is aware of, is that the turnaround time on a licensed water well and distribution system application with AEP can take a year, sometimes more. So having that AEP approval in hand prior to the release of the development permit really does impede the planned opening dates of summer 2018 for the new 64 lots. In addition to posting an LOC for the water, we're certainly prepared to meet all the other conditions of the development permit as listed in Appendix A of the report as quickly as possible. So I've provided you today with a letter from the General Manager of Development and Construction with RV Sites Canada, and it essentially is outlining and attached to a quote from a local company based out of Strathmore to provide that interim haul-in, haul-out solution. So essentially the water would be hauled in from Strathmore Potable Bulk Water Station. Does require the installation of a 10,000 gallon cistern and a pump tank with 50 gallons of usage per day for the 64 sites. The quote on the second page is done at max capacity, so not worst case scenario, but essentially if those lots were full. The park typically never surpasses about 75% occupancy. I think long weekends, sometimes they see full occupancy, but it's quite rare. And this system would be distributed to sites through a closed water line with a cistern and pump tank, as I mentioned, and then all water would be transferred over to a well-based system upon a decision of approval, hopefully from AEP. So to conclude, the Oasis team is really committed to providing a safe and hospitable environment for users. They're looking forward to providing new opportunities for recreation through the public golf course, and also potentially providing a new rental space for the community in that clubhouse area. This has been a very complex process. We have been very diligent, very responsive, and have appreciated working with the county on this process and getting all of our studies in time and working with the requests of the county to the best of our abilities. Due to the seasonal nature of this business, a delayed release of the GP, it is problematic for the Oasis Grove team, as I mentioned, to proceed with that summer 2018 opening of the 64 sites. We certainly hope that you will consider our interim solution for potable water. The commercial water license will still be applied for in the interim timeframe and work towards that goal. And we request that the solution that the installation, treatment, and distribution under an approved commercial water license be written into our development agreement. And this is to ensure that a long-term solution can be achieved with no liability or added expense to the county. Again, thank you for allowing me the time to present today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for Ellen?
Can I just ask when the application was completed and submitted?
Through the chair, I believe it was in August of no, not August, I think it was September. So September of last year.
So the next question I have is in regards to the highway intersection improvements at 901. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what your plan was to do the highway intersection improvements in the wintertime? How that was going to work?
Through the chair, we haven't gotten that far in terms of actual construction upgrades yet. Of course, we'd still have to make our application with Alberta Transportation.
So my next question would be, how would you foreseeably open the campground without those intersection improvements completed prior to?
Through the chair, I believe that would be a question for administration, but my understanding was that the transportation upgrades are as part of our development agreement, and as such, we have 2 years to complete them.
Through the chair, that's correct. In our development agreement that we have as condition part of the development permit application, in the DA, the transportation infrastructure upgrades are required to be met.
What are the timelines on the Alberta transportations? When do they have to be met? Prior to opening, after open, 2 years later?
Through the chair, so with the pre-release conditions, we have it that the DA is signed as a pre-release condition, and so that agreement is stating that they are in agreement to proceed with those and meet the requirements of the county. And as the conditions after the pre-release, it's intended that they are required to follow the recommendations from the transportation impact assessment, which includes those upgrades. So they're agreeing at the beginning before the permit is issued that they will comply with the development agreement requirements, and then post permit release, they would be required to follow through with those recommendations from the TIA. So they would be happening concurrently, I believe. That's the intent. Because the highway, Alberta Transportation is potentially involved with that, the timelines for them, I'm not 100% sure what that would involve.
Okay. Any other questions?
So through the chair to staff then, where it says that all the conditions must be met by April 10th, 2019, is that one of them? Does that include the roads?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear the full question.
I'm just trying to find it again when I read in here where the conditions all had to be met by April 10th, 2019.
Yes, that's correct. So I believe in the conditions, it does state that they have to meet all the conditions within 1 year, and then they have to do, I believe, all the upgrades within 2 years. I'd have to double check though and see how it was written.
Any other questions?
As I'm reading the letters of concern, how do you guys plan to mitigate the littering problem, garbage blowing everywhere, and golf balls flying across property lines?
Through the chair, I haven't read that letter in full. I'm assuming that's the one that was handed out this morning. Okay, so there's a lot of different things to consider here. As we mentioned, the landowners have taken over this site as of January of 2017. So this is a great opportunity to put in some extra conditions or extra understanding between neighbors. If a netting would be appreciated between that buffer of farms and the golf course, that this is the first time that's come up. I know the Oasis Grove team quite well. They would certainly be willing to look at that, absolutely. As for the littering on the highway, I'm not too sure how to correlate exactly if it is people at the campground. I'm just not too sure. But I do know that when the new landowners came in, there were some sort of more problematic tenants at the RV site that have since left. And since we've come in, we've notified all neighbors of non-compliant structures that need to be upgraded. And the Oasis Grove team has also incorporated some new bylaws, some community bylaws that were submitted with our application. So I think that sort of like the morale in the community of Oasis Grove itself is really looking to improve since the previous ownership. And signage, we could certainly incorporate some signage about littering and maybe even incorporate that into the Oasis Grove community bylaws. That's totally an option. And I know that they would be more than willing to look at netting on the golf course as well.
Is there any current fencing around the property?
I might, through the chair, I might have to defer that to the operators. I'm not 100% sure. So an upgraded fencing strategy is certainly something that we could consider for this upcoming season. Absolutely.
Through the chair, when you're doing the upgrade on 22, do you plan to pave 254 to the emergency entrance to there for dust control and for,
Through the chair, at this time, there's no plans to pave that stretch of the road. The TIA actually just suggested a dust abatement control and then to reduce the speed limit. If there was any additional density in the campsite moving forward, it would definitely trigger the requirement for that stretch to be paved, and the landowners are aware of that.
Donna?
What about the road going north? They say in the letters here that they're going north and then going that way into Strathmore. What's your plan there?
So I would have to actually maybe grab my transportation impact assessment through the chair, sorry. But as far as I understand, the results only recommended any upgrades to the highway 901 coming up Range Road 254. They did do some analysis of those intersections, but there was no conditions or recommendations made for upgrades.
Any other comment, questions, not comments, questions from board? Could I just get you to hold? I'll ask for comments after, okay? Thanks. Okay.
Just an explanation of why you want a concession for this water well. What's the guarantee that you're going to find water? Why haven't they done the well? Why haven't they dug the well in, put a well in place and applied for the permit, license, whatever? They've known they're going to do this for, what, 2 years, a couple of years? They've known they were going to do it, but.
So through the chair, throughout this process, it took us a couple months to find that there was no commercial water license on site because there was an irrigation license. There is an irrigation license, and so there was a bit of confusion about that. And it's actually not part of the initial checklist or requirement of a development permit to pull your water license. So granted, this was applied for in 2017 of September. However, that is not a due diligence item that is required on a checklist. And therefore, this was brought to our attention kind of in the fall, I would say, after this application started its review process. So it's quite a lengthy process to actually go about applying for the commercial water license application, and that has been initiated with engineers and our hydrology team, but it does involve actually drilling a well and then of course doing all of the testing for it. So that has all been in process. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a lengthy process and we just aren't there yet.
Any other questions? Donna?
So you've been under this new campground for just over a year?
The landowners acquired it in January of 2017, so yeah, that's correct.
So you only have one season that you've dealt with, dealing with what's going on, neighbors, trying to get everything established.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I'm from Civic Works Planning and Design. I'm not from the Oasis team. I've made this application on behalf of the Oasis Grove team. I came on board in this project in August of 2017 and started out with initial site assessment, our main concern at that time was identifying all the non-compliant structures and decks. And the Oasis Grove team has, essentially had one summer. And throughout this last summer, they did a lot of cleanup, a lot of restructuring of bylaws and work on the new clubhouse as well. So they've been pretty busy with those upgrades.
Is there a reason why they want to expand before they get into compliance?
Through the chair, I might just defer that question to one of the owners and operators, Mr. Marty Fletcher. He's here today and he can answer that question for you.
Okay. Keep it in mind. Any other questions? Okay, Was the SATA truck watering, hauling two loads a day, that's 4 trips, was that included in the TIA?
That was not included in the TIA, no.
Okay. And do you have an agreement with Strathmore to haul that much water?
Through the chair, like, I'm not too sure what you mean. Can you clarify?
They have a bulk water station there, and I know some of the provisions from that water comes from Calgary. And I know some of the conditions that were placed on that water line. And I'm thinking, I would like to see a written, if that's where you want to get it. There are, I don't know if we have bulk sales in Carsland. We have bulk sales, we'll have in Galician County water, but I'm not so sure about the Strathmore one.
Right.
I would like to see in a written.
Through the Reeve, we could certainly provide that for you. This is just the initial due diligence that the general manager of construction completed within this last week to get a quote and to see if it would be feasible.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, look at Galician too. It can't be much different in trucking. And if we're going to put in a temporary system, that wasn't part of the original application, and AHS has not had an opportunity to comment on that. I'd like to get them comments from AHS too.
Through the chair, I have talked with AHS in regards to a temporary hauling service or cistern option for the site. And they said that as long as it's provincially approved, then they would be fine with it. They would continue monitoring the site until Alberta Environment would take over. But at this time, the option for a water well, the option for a cistern or hauling, they are provincially approved options for it, as long as it's done correctly and to all the provincial regulations.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks for your presentation. Do the owners want to make any statements? Owners here. Not seeing anybody. Oh, okay. Just please state your name and turn the mic on, please.
Right here. Thank you. My name is Marty Fletcher, one of the owners of Oasis Grove. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any statement you want to make?
We've really, as we tried to point out here, enjoyed the opportunity to work with the group. When we spent a lot of time with Kim prior to even the purchase of Oasis Grove, and I would like to think that we've really tried again to be the be a good community member when we purchased it. And to your question, Donna, it'll work its way in here. We thought when we purchased the existing campground from the last group, we had 320 sites out there. And through the diligence process, it turned out that there wasn't. He did not get the correct DPs. He just, the previous gentleman expanded in sort of a haphazard fashion, and consequently, there ended up being far less sites than what we thought we had purchased, as well as they certainly were not all bona fide sites, and many were doubles and illegal. So again, prior to our purchase, we spent a lot of time out here working with the group here, and we came to what we thought was a really good understanding, and it's continued to be so, that we would try to clean up the entire process. There was, like I said, there was things like if you might have two sites on one, like I said, there might be a gas line running in between the two, which is obviously, in contravention of any kind of fire codes. There was a tremendous amount of wires being run all of it. It was a beautiful place, but dangerous, messy, unkempt. So the first thing that we felt we wanted to do, or we had to do, was make it safe. And again, spending time with Ms. Sandbeck out here and just trying to get a lay of the land and, what needed to be, what are the bylaws, what are the regulations, what do we have to get done to, satisfy, what, the new people that were moving in, and certainly bring it up to code and clean up the whole mess that place was. And it was not only timely, it was very costly. So, again, don't answer your question. We're just trying to get back to where we thought what we had purchased. Yes, we could have done a little bit more diligence, but we were under, sort of a general understanding that we were going to get to that point at some point in time. Get back to that number for us, which is, yes, it's economics, but we've, that's what we're trying to do out there.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you kindly.
Just while he's up there, the question came up about the littering on the neighboring property as far as golf balls and that type of stuff. Would you be opposed to having a condition in there that you would re-fence the north side of that property with a wind fence, I guess, or some type of a fence that would eliminate the good majority of that problem?
I would absolutely love to build it. Yeah, no, and on any other place too. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming up. I see lots of people here from the public. I'm thinking there's some comments. I'll entertain some comments. Try not to repeat yourself, and if somebody previously has made a comment that was your comment, please, you don't have to get up and say it again, okay? So, Danny, you had your hand up first. Please.
I just have some concerns with the dust control. I know in the county of Wheatland, when you do a 4-lot subdivision, due to dust, you have to put in a chip seal road. These people are putting in a 300-lot subdivision. I know they're calling it a campground, but there's a 35-year lease on these lots. So basically, they're putting in a 300-lot subdivision. I think that road at least should be paved. Like that's a lot of traffic on that road. Like it's an incredible amount of traffic.
Okay.
I don't know what county policy is on that, but I think it's after 10 or 12 lots you have to pave the road.
I'm thinking 6, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the amount, but a 300-lot subdivision or a 300-lot campground far exceeds that. And there's a lot of people that go up and down that road.
Sure.
And not only are you going to have the people in the campground, you have local people, but the people in the campground one day, they're going to start complaining, and then the county's going to end up paving that road anyway, just because of the complaints from the campground or the subdivision, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if you do have any more specific questions regarding the road and what's required by the county, we do have Mike Zarin here who can answer those questions if need be. But through the TIA that we had, it was indicated that there was no paving required along that road that's adjacent to the campground. So at this time, it wasn't a requirement to pave it. Rather, we have a dust control abatement agreement within the conditions that the landowners would be required to sign on to. So at this time, that's what we have. And any other upgrades to the roads outside of the campground would also be conditioned in there as well. But no paving at this time has been required.
Mike, would you be prepared to answer a couple of questions? Okay, could you use the...
Morning.
Okay, good morning, Mike. So before, they have to provide dust control. In order to do that, they have to have a road use agreement?
Correct. So the avenue we're going to take with this is having the applicant sign an agreement with the county for dust control yearly, potentially even 2 times a year, depending on the condition of the road. And that'll be for every resident along the north-south road and the east-west road from 260, from the Range Road east to 817. So that agreement will be in place in perpetuity.
Okay. So the dust control method of their dust controls of their choosing, but it has to be dust control.
Correct, yeah. We talk about chip seal. Chip seal, that standard is set aside strictly for 4-lot, 6-lot subdivisions where there's a dead-end cul-de-sac. Typically aren't going to see a lot of heavy use traffic on that. It's more for residential. Dust control will produce the same effect, but we're able to maintain it a lot easier, not have our crews go out or have a contractor go out and seal coat it, or have it break apart as it would with a seal coat.
Okay, but so part of this road use agreement, if the road is adversely impacted, whose responsibility is it to? I'm thinking if they just go out there and put calcium on and we got a bad rain and keep using the road, then who's going to grade it, redo, reapply? Because if you just put 2 applications on a bad year, you might need 3, you know.
Right. So through the chair, the agreement proposed here is strictly for dust control. It doesn't lead to a road use agreement like we would with heavy use or heavy intensity haulers, that sort of thing. This is strictly for dust abatement.
Okay.
So yeah, if the intensity is that high, regardless of this development permit, we would require a road use agreement from any intensive use haulers in the area.
So what qualifies intensive use?
It varies on the standard of road. We don't have a set benchmark for 5 or 10 trips. It really does matter. If the road can only take 2 trips a day, then we require road use on that. If it's a high quality, high grade gravel road, then we can go upwards of 10, 15, 20.
Okay.
Without needing a road use.
Okay, thanks. I see Tom's got his light
Just
on.
one question, Mike. If we were to do a road count, like on any county road, at what point would we decide that it is a road that should be paved? Like how many trips per day would we be looking at?
Well, that varies. We do look at it. I believe the policy is 200 vehicles per day. That's what our policy had. But like I say, same thing. If it's high intensity of residential on that road, then it has a different view than if it's high intense but no one in the area, that sort of thing. So our policy, if I maybe I should clarify that through the policy, but I believe it's 200 vehicles per day.
It just seems to me that with 300 some odd lots, there's going to be a lot of traffic on that road, and I don't care how you do it. And I just do not think calcium chloride is going to, and I don't think the road's going to hold up, and I think we're going to get hung with spending an awful lot of time maintaining that road. But I'm not in the road building business, so that's my opinion.
Any other questions for us? Donna?
Have you had any luck with like putting signs saying local traffic only? That's probably not going to work. How can you eliminate people going north and then east from the campground?
Through the chair, really, we can only mitigate, or we can only deal with the traffic that's coming and anticipate that they are going to travel that way. Short of making it a poor quality road, which we don't want to do, people are going to travel north. They're going to go to Strathmore. We're predicting a large ratio of trips are going to be going north out of this development rather than south. So that's why we added the condition for dust abatement on the north and east as well.
When was the traffic impact assessment done?
Through the chair, the date on the TIA was in January of 2018. And within the document, it took into account the open day traffic that was predicted for the site with the additional 64 lots. So they did take into mind that increased traffic could happen and occur. But as I mentioned in my report, the TIA concluded that although there was traffic going in and out, it wasn't enough to deem it necessary to do a paving or any other further upgrades than what was stated within the report. And just to remind MPC, you do have the option to amend any of these conditions. As your role as MPC, you can do that. If you deem it necessary or if you have concerns, you can add conditions there that may aid in the development of this application.
Are there any historical traffic counts from when the campground is most active, like during the summer season?
Through the chair, within the report, I don't recall them having any comments in regards to historical. I believe it was done in January 2018, and so they used those and made some predictions as to what the traffic could be like, but unfortunately I don't recall any comments of that nature.
Probably this isn't for you, Mike, but I know there's a feed lot just east of there. Is there, yes, 3L Ranches. And the people that are camping there, like I just don't want it to be a problem of 300 or 600 people coming and saying that the smell is too bad. Are they well informed when they buy into these leases? Sorry, I should have asked that before.
Well, we'll use the mic later. Yeah, I'll get you up and then remember the question, please. Okay. Anything else for staff? Thanks, Mike. Your turn. I'm sorry I don't know your name. Okay.
Just one question through the chair, if I might, to staff. Are you comfortable with this?
Through the chair, as long as it's provincially approved and regulated, we wouldn't have an issue per se. But I mean, as I stated in my report, we would prefer to see a permanent solution prior to the actual development and occupancy of the site. However, at this point, if we've received legal counsel again on this topic, because it is provincially mandated, if they meet the provincial regulations, the county wouldn't necessarily have any liability issues with that, but we would just want to make sure that there is a permanent solution in place. I do have draft conditions if there is consideration for it, and you can look at them and consider them. But again, at the end of the day, MPC makes that decision if they are comfortable with it. But the province has stated that a cistern hauling is provincially regulated, and it is a good alternative or use of water hauling and a water source.
Yeah, my biggest concern is if we allow that to happen and then they try to follow through and they can't get the water license or the water they need, then we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't, because we've allowed the development. We'll be in the same position we are with Muirfield and another issue. So I don't agree with the extension to allowing it.
Okay, any comment, Alan?
Mr. Chairman, if MPC wishes to alter any of the conditions, we would like to go in camera to discuss that, because there are some legal ramifications to altering the conditions.
Okay. Any more comments from the area residents? Okay, I'll take the area residents now, please. Yeah, up to the mic, please. And there's a little button there, a rectangle type thing. Give it a push and the light will come on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm listening.
And your name, please, for the record.
My name is Daryl Jelinas. I've been a resident where I'm at for 26 years, and my neighbors have been much longer. And we've put up with this campground for quite a while, and dust I'm pretty tolerant with the feed lots and everything else. But I find it's gotten a little bit out of control. There's more and more people there, and it's at the point. I was sitting in a dust bowl all summer. Dust just hanging in there, doesn't disappear. And second point is, there's 330 sites out there. These sites are at $38,000 a pop. That's $12 million. So we're talking a big project here. And it seems like everything's wishy-washy here, and nobody's on the ball here. Everything's like, well, this isn't done, that. Nothing's tied up. We can't even get an answer about the traffic I haven't seen a straight answer yet in this council here. Okay. And you know what? Things have fallen on deaf ears. All these promises from this, nothing's happened with that road. We came in here, wrote letters. I never heard. My brother, neighbors have not heard one thing back. That traffic is unreal. You multiply 330 sites. Now, remember, these things are now sold, private little lots. Each person, this is not a campground. There's no hiking and fishing and all this. That's a drinking establishment. Drugs, drinking, these guys drive up and down impaired. I guarantee you put an RCMP, do you ever talk to the RCMP impact, how many times they've gone over there? You put a check stop on my road, 230, and they use 230 a lot more than that north-south road. I live there. You talk, all you guys, nobody lives there. We all got these answers. We're the losers. These guys are making $12 million just on the sites. It's all money. They want it rushed through. 64 sites. They don't have the well drilled. This. It's a big rush. They want to get it done by this spring. That is appalling.
Okay. I hear your concerns.
But my point is, too, these sites, what's stopping a guy? You know how the economy is. These guys are going to be living there all year round. How do they control? You know, people don't have the money. Well, you know what? You can stay at my campsite over the winter. You pay me rent. This, that, and everything else. You multiply that for how many people are in there. Each weekend, a guy's going to bring 5 guys in partying with them. How many cars? Multiply the cars. The other sad thing about it is I see cars up and down going to McDonald's, going to the liquor store, back and forth, dropping their Timmy's, A&W stuff all over my field. I got a half a mile of frontage of gravel there. I don't even want to grow hay anymore because I got that much dust on it. That's crap. No road, a little gravel, this, that. The feedlot goes back and forth. I don't mind that. But that road, like you say, is going to get punched out. You're worried about that water truck? How many trips? Count these guys. That's minuscule, okay. That water truck going up and down.
I understand
Anyways,
your
got
concerns.
My point.
Yeah.
But I'm mad about it.
The comment about the water.
Everything's falling on deaf ears. I think this was a waste of time. It was already made up. You guys had your decision made.
Okay.
Sounds like you guys want to put the 64 lots too.
Any other comments? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, my name's David Page, and I'm an old farmer. I'm having a very hard time hearing most of this discussion. I own land north of it. My son bought that just recently. And I own land farther north and south of it. I try to travel that road with equipment. It's virtually impossible. It's unsafe. The traffic is horrendous. You try and move farm machinery up and down that road, it's impossible. The garbage, the people walking, they stop in the middle of the road for no reason. You'd think that if they saw a tractor the size of a house coming, maybe they'd pull off to the side, but good luck. They sit there and they go like this. Now what? You know, after they pass 4 approaches. And I got another major issue with, they say they've contacted the landowners. Have you contacted me? Have you contacted anyone here?
I never got a response from the person.
I heard twice we've talked to landowners. No. Who? Which ones? Farther out? My son owns that quarter, or the 80 acres directly north of it. The golf balls, any one of us here, I'm getting old, like I said, and crippled. I got bad knees. I can pick up a 20-liter pail of golf balls in 15 minutes. And then combining that field, it looks like there's been a herd of cattle out there. They go out to get their golf balls, and I think they cut tops off the wheat for decoration. Dog feces. They put their feces in the bag and they chuck it in the field. That's great. Not just a few. Hundreds. Unreal. I have had people in the gateway of my field, and I'm going to go in the tractor, and I pulled up right behind the tractor, no sign of life, and I go up to the window, and they've got a spoon and a lighter and a syringe. So I guess we all know what that is. I don't know what drugs what, but that's happening. Brian and Dale talking about the traffic and the garbage. It's not just from the campground to 901. It's up and then it's down 230 to 817, constant. Everybody that's out there, they said 75% occupancy maximum, plus they have a friend out there on the weekend or maybe 2. So we got to go. This site that you're talking about, it's not 300 plus anymore. Not to mention, like I said, I couldn't hear. Did you say the additional 85 had already been passed? We never got any notification of that. Why are you looking at another 60 if we're already over? I was never notified that they were over. I thought over the years the traffic is just getting horrendous. What's going on here and the issues with it? Kites out in the field. It's just ongoing. It's just a menace for the local landowners, residents. I hope you won't even consider the extra 60. I think we need to back the bus up and deal with the additional. They say they did their due diligence. How do you do due diligence and buy something that's way over what it's permitted for? And another big issue I have, what are they doing with the sewage? If you want to do a subdivision of more than, what, 5, 6 houses, you have to have sewage treatment on site. I think they've got, from what I've heard, a 4x4 box buried in the ground at each site that they pump out. Well, is this an environmental box? Is it up to par? I think what it is, it's an old chemical container, 4x4 tote. And those things go rotten. They get hard and brittle and break. And I guess that's, I got so many issues, I'm trying not to report things or repeat things, but it's just ruined the area. I think we need a fence around at minimum to stop the golf balls, and you need a fence to stop the people. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, thanks for coming up. Any other? Go ahead, please.
My name's Anthony Baker. I own the acreage across from the northwest corner of where the campground is. I am directly across from their property to my property. The original proposal I received in the mail showed an entrance on the northwest corner to the road, the application for an access there. We do not want an access there right at the mouth of our driveway. We do not want that kind of influence directly on our driveway. We've got dogs and all the rest of it. The other thing is, I can't reiterate how much my neighbors have already said about the traffic, about the garbage, especially from takeout stuff, all up and down the 254 up to the 230 and down to the 917. It's incredible how much it increases during the summer months. Traffic, I can't go up and down the road for a walk. My wife and I used to love going up and down the road for a walk, 20-minute walk, and not have a vehicle go by. Now there's a vehicle going by every 2 minutes. Every 5 minutes you'll see 2 vehicles going by. It's about that bad. So we're not looking at moving into the city. We don't want the city moving in and around us. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Please use the, okay, any other comments? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alan Walters, and I live just south of the campsite. I live on the hill. There's a new red and white house up on top of the hill. I bought a foreclosure up there and fixed it up for this, you know, for the community. It's a nice community. And those roads, if you pave those roads, you're talking a 60K limit. I drive on the highway at 100. I get passed by everybody. Who's going to enforce those roads? Who's going to pave those roads? Am I, as a taxpayer, that home, going to have to pay for that? My taxes have risen enough already fixing up a house. Am I going to be enduring more taxes for this venture? Who's going to pay for it? Manitox isn't here today, the guy that runs the company, and they calcium that road twice a year, and it is not enough. You guys come in and grade the roads 4, 7, 8 times a year. You guys do a good job, but that calcium's gone after you grade the road. So who's going to do it every time? And that road's got to be, it's disgusting right now. I can't even drive my truck hardly down it. There's no gravel on the roads. That road has to be built like a highway because of the amount of cars. In the city, they say 1.5 vehicles per household. 320 units, that's 450 vehicles. Not every weekend, but a lot of weekends. I can count 70 vehicles from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Maybe you should put those car counters out there, because I asked last year to reduce the speeds on that road, and nothing was done.
No car counters were put on that road. I used to live in Rocky View. They put car counters, then they accounted for how many vehicles, then they reduced the speed. None of that's been addressed. And you can't do it in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, please.
My name's Jeremy Thompson. I live at the intersection of 230 and 254 on the north side of the campground, so the route that seems to be forgotten by the planning. I'm not sure who this young lady here said. There's a plan for pavement to, or dust abatement to 901 and 230, 254. The intersection at 901 and 254 is quite dangerous as it is right now. There's no approach or laneway, and I think that was part of the plan. But on Highway 2, or on the gravel 230, it's a considerable concern for me with the traffic coming north. At the corner, at all hours of the day, we hear vehicles slowing and speeding, and on occasion there's an ATV. I don't know if it's from that campsite or not. I hope that hasn't been allowed or hasn't been approved that there's ATVs allowed on there. But anyway, my concern is mostly that if dust abatement is going to be done and pavement done from the campground to 901, that intersection needs to be dealt with before any more traffic can be allowed there. It's quite dangerous to try to cross 901 or get onto 901 as it is. And I feel it's a major issue that needs to be addressed before any other approval happens. There's already not the infrastructure to support that many vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm Brian Jelinas, by the way. Just live on the Range Road 230.
Okay.
Anyways, like I said, I don't cause trouble in my own business, but I put up with this thing for a long time. Now, when Clayson took over that place, everything he was doing was basically illegal. And when they went to sell it, they had 86 campsites there that weren't approved. So why are we talking about increasing? We should be decreasing right now. Because through that time, the traffic was getting horrendous. He built that golf course. I never heard anything about it. That's bringing in more traffic. Now they're going to make it public and even bring in more traffic. No one's talking about even that golf course. And when we went down with Larry, the neighbor, he got killed, what was it, 2016? So he's our right neighbor beside us. He just couldn't stand that place. But he got killed just as that, I think we were supposed to come in here. I was out of country. He showed up. Because they wanted to sell it, but these sites weren't approved. So how did they get approved? I mean, everything there was done illegally. What if I do that? Can I set up 100 sites in my place and then come in later and ask for forgiveness? Like, I don't understand how this place runs. But you guys should be cutting back sites, not adding. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll let the applicant close off. Go ahead.
Sorry, just trying to collect my notes here. Okay, so I just would like to take the opportunity to remind MPC that this, as I mentioned, has been a very, very complex application, and it truly is because of many of the reasons that the neighbors are speaking to today. Unfortunately, so much time went on with absolutely no enforcement, enforcement in terms of planning that I know of, and no development permit applications as the previous owner sort of added on and kind of willy-nilly expanded the campground. And so when we come in for a development permit application such as this is our opportunity to fix all of those issues. And technically, because it has expanded in such a way for so many years, this proposal, of course, is to fulfill that gap that was missing of the additional lots. And then it's also the opportunity at this time for the landowners to add the 64 lots, because that is part of their business plan. So it's really a comprehensive overview of this site. And we certainly did contemplate throughout this process if we should hold off on the 64 lots and just get the existing lots under control. However, in terms from a planning and development perspective, from our perspective, and I can't speak for administration, it really does make sense to look at this site as a whole. And as such, that's how our TIA was completed as well. And I also just remind, and I'm sure transportation can speak to this as well, but when transportation impact assessments are completed at off-peak seasons, they essentially go back and use data that they already have. So a recreational vehicle park data was used by Bunch & Associates, as was golf course data, and then they essentially apply it based off of other research and other data counts that they have for the surrounding area. So it's not that in a TIA, it's not that they literally go out and they do count intersections, but they do accommodate and count, for a year overview. It's a very expensive report. It's done by professional transportation engineers, people who are much smarter than I am. So I just want to assure you of that as well. With this development permit as well, and I completely understand some of the concerns that we've heard, and I've heard concerns from the landowners as well that when they took this over, this really was a big feat to clean up the site. But we're always looking at the use in planning, not the user. And so that's just something to keep in mind. It's been a really big job to clean this site up and sort of implement some new bylaws internally that are gonna assist with that process. And I can assure you that the Oasis Grove team is very committed to that. And their intention is for a family-friendly environment. There's a small beach area, there's a recreational zone. When I was out on site doing my site visit, I think I met a couple who is in Arizona half the year and then at Oasis Grove half the year. So again, it's certainly can understand the concerns that have happened through this expansion. But I would also like to remind that those are enforcement issues, and at any given time, community members have the opportunity to call bylaw services and enforcement and deal with those concerns that way. I would also like to clarify for MPC, we did not have to hold public engagement as part of this process. So we did not contact any adjacent landowners. That was not part of our process in this development permit application, as we were not advised to hold public engagement. So I'm not too sure, what the gentleman was referring to, but to clarify for you, the only circulation they would have received is from administration, not from myself as the applicant. Yeah, what else did I want to, and also, sorry, just to hopefully rest of one of the other gentleman's concerns, we are not proposing a new access or exit in the northwest corner. That was part of our emergency response plan as an emergency egress only. Hopefully I've covered all my points. Again, thank you very much for listening to us today on this very complex issue. I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you. Board have any additional comments, questions? On advice of our CAO, I would like to go on camera, but before we do, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, for stating your concerns in a concise way. I appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for coming in, and we'll certainly be talking about it. So I don't know if the board wants to go on camera at this time or for legal. I believe it was a legal opinion. I'll need a motion.
Before we go on camera, I would just like to say, before anything goes through, I'd like to see the water have a permanent solution, the fence go up. And the point was made, you can't really continue with that access with how dangerous it is and the proposed 64 sites this summer. That's just going to up your traffic. So actually, I'll put a motion on the floor that MPC doesn't approve development permit. That MPC refused development permit DP 2017-115 for the reason given that we'd like to see a little more work done on the water issue, dust control, and littering before it comes back. And the intersection improvement.
Okay, thanks for that. Is there any questions? I believe since we have this motion on the floor, we don't have to go on camera anymore. Okay. Garbage was mentioned too, right? Yeah. Board, any questions? Ben?
Yeah, I understand where Jason's trying to go, but if we refuse the application, then they don't even have to clean up what's there. The sites that weren't, what about when they talk about 86 unapproved sites, that we can deal with that without approving anything else in there?
Who are you asking, Ben?
I don't know.
Staff. Okay. Go ahead.
Through the chair, so the original intent of the development permit was to not only bring into the 86 sites that were added on without a permit with the prior owner, but then to accommodate the 64 additional sites that the new owner is requesting to add in. So from my understanding with steps moving forward, if you were to refuse the application, that would mean none of those 86 sites would become compliant, and then the 64 sites would never be built or be permitted at this time to be built. Altering the motion to only allow for the 86 sites to be in compliance, but not consider the 64, I'd have to ask and see if that's, I don't think that's possible, because the original intent of the application is for all those lots to be permitted. You can alter the conditions, but not necessarily what the application is requesting.
Okay. I don't think the motion took that into consideration. No. Any other questions answered, Ben? Any other questions?
So we can't make a motion to
you have a motion on the floor, vote on it, and move on.
We have a motion on the floor. So it's a motion to refuse. That's reasons given. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion? It's carried. Thanks for coming in.
So a question to staff then, with some of the issues that were brought up, is are we looking into that?
Okay. And we'll go on to, had a request for a 5-minute break. I'll certainly grant it. Okay, we'll call MPC back to order, and we'll do development permit DP 2018-024. Whenever you're ready, Suzanne.
All right. So this application is for a property in the Thiessen Industrial ASP area, which is just on the west side of the town of Strathmore boundary on Highway 1 on the south side. There is a collection of industrial buildings there. The parcel is 5.63 acres. It's already zoned industrial general. The applicant is proposing to operate a business which offers mechanical repair for small cars and trucks, auto body painting, car detailing, and body repair, dismantling and restoring auto body parts. And he will utilize a welding machine, a hoist, alignment machine, paint booth, air compressor, and air makeup unit. So there's no new buildings required for this. There's already 2 buildings on the parcel that are leased out to different applicants. There's going to be a maximum of 10 vehicles stored on site in a secured parking area, an estimated 25 clients per week, and there's approximately 5 employees. The hours are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 5 days a week. So in this application, I'm going to bring up actually my drawing because it makes it easier to see that. So it falls within the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board, the CMRB. This is all the pink area. It also falls within the West Highway 1 Area Structure Plan, which is this purpley area, and then the Thiessen Industrial ASP, which is this little yellow. So just to give you a context of all of the plans that we kind of need to be cognizant of. So because this area, this application falls within these area structure plans, which have already been adopted by council, they didn't need to go to the CMRB for review. So they do comply with the West Highway 1 area structure plan, and they do comply with the Thiessen ASP, which basically says everything has to comply with the West Highway 1 area structure plan. So the application is for a specific use in the IG district called automotive and equipment services. So a lot of the uses that go in those buildings are like a medium industrial or a light industrial, but this one has a specific use, and it says it's development for the rental, lease, sale, storage, service, restoration, and or mechanical repair of automobiles. So we have circulated, Alberta Transportation has said as long as there's no new structures being built, they don't need a roadside development permit. Here is the building itself where it's going. So there's a service road here adjacent to Highway 1. And there has already, we also circulated Superior Safety Codes and our deputy fire chief, who had some comments about the paint booth, because there are specific regulations regarding a paint booth installation. So I've sent the stand data to the applicant, and he is going to have this paint booth professionally installed and is willing to get the appropriate building permit for that. So that's the parcel there with the 2 buildings in relation to this 10-lot industrial subdivision. That's the building there. It was for rent. And the landscaping was done, I believe, 2 years ago on all the developed parcels along there. So, in conclusion, the intent for the previously approved, this business fits within the intent of the statutory plans which were previously approved for the area. It complies with the IG district. It's compatible with other existing light industrial uses already operating in the Thiessen Industrial Subdivision. The landscaping and stormwater management have been completed with previous applications. Staff support this application. So MPC has 3 options. They can approve DP 2018-024, they can refuse with reasons given, or they can provide an alternative recommendation of their choosing. Staff are recommending staff recommend option 1, approval of DP 2018-024, a discretionary use permit for for automotive and equipment services to be located at Plan 101-0005, Block 1, Lot 7, subject to the conditions in Appendix A of the Development Permit Report. Don't think there was anything unusual in these conditions. They have to comply with their letter of intent and plans as submitted, and any new structures will require the approval of the Development Authority. We have as a note the requirement for the installation of the paint booth to meet Alberta Building Code. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Concerns? Scott?
Just clarification, is it for the whole building or a couple bays or?
It's for the entire building, correct? Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Concerns?
Just,
Tom?
anytime I hear dismantling of auto bodies, I don't want, so you've got storage for 10 vehicles on site. Is it sort of going to be out of, you're going to keep this neat like it's your own place, Dan?
Okay. Any other questions? Wishes?
My guy. I move that we approve DP 2018-02 as a discretionary use development permit application for automotive and equipment services to be located at Plan 101-005, Block 1, Lot 7, Northeast 824-5, west of the 4th, subject to the conditions in Appendix A of the Development Permit Report.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks for coming in. And we'll move on to their subdivision applications. First one's SD 2017-34. Whenever you're ready, please.
All right, so this is a subdivision application, SD 2017-34, to subdivide out one 3.47 acre parcel from the titled land southeast 42625 west of the 4. It's located adjacent to Township Road 260 and approximately 4 kilometers north of the hamlet of Ardenode in Division 5. Staff is recommending that MPC choose option 1 to approve subdivision application SD 2017-34 with conditions noted in Appendix A of the planning report. The purpose of the application is to subdivide out a 3.47 acre parcel. It will be the first parcel out on the quarter and is intended for future residential development. The parcel was previously redesignated to country residential on June 21st, 2016. Relevant policies are the SSRP Strategic Plan and Implementation Plan for Economy and Agriculture, the Regional Growth Management Strategy, Section 4.3, MDP Policies 3.1 and 3.6, and Land Use Bylaw 2016-01, Section 9.3 for country residential. MPC has 2 options for their consideration. Option 1 is to approve SD 2017-34 with the noted conditions in Appendix A, or Option 2 to refuse subdivision application 2017-34. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or concerns? Wishes?
I'll make the motion to approve the subdivision application SD 2017-34 be approved with the conditions noted in Appendix A.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. And subdivision file SD 2017-43. Turn the mic on, please. Wasn't talking to me.
I apologize for the wait. So this is a 3.5 acre subdivision out of a 83 acre parcel, and it is located close to the intersection of Township Road 252 and Range Road 233, and it's approximately 10 kilometers north of Highway 1. We are recommending approval for this subdivision. Intent of the application is to create a new parcel for the estate purposes out of the east half of the quarter section. And if this approved, it'll be the second parcel out of the east half of the subject quarter section. And there's currently a house and a garage on the proposed parcel. And the relevant policies in the legislation, there's Section 8 in South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Implementation Plan, and under Building Sustainable Communities, it's complying to that. And for the Municipal Development Plan, it complies with the policies relating to agriculture and residential development. So Municipal Planning Commission has two options. One is approval, and two is the refusal. And we are recommending approval that because the proposed subdivision is complying with the land use bylaw, municipal development plan, and subdivision and development regulations. And subdivision authority is satisfied with that. The proposed subdivision with the stated conditions is suitable for the purpose for which the subdivision intended pursuant to the Section 7 of the Subdivision and Development Regulations of Municipal Government Act. I think that's all. I can just pull the map as a final look. The proposed conditions are all standard type conditions. And this is the property that highlighted in yellow. That is the subdivision that is applied for. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Ben?
Is there any access to that rest of the parcel other than through that yard? The parcel that's being created, there's access to it, then there's access off that parcel to the remainder of the quarter. Is there another access for those outbuildings that aren't part of those two subdivisions?
Yes, there's an existing access provided, like there's an existing access for the parcel and the remainder of the subdivision.
So they won't be going, they don't need to go through that yard to access those
I think I have to look back again in detail, but I think it was looked by the Public Works for the as the proper process of application, making sure that there's both parcels divided have access, proper access.
Separate access.
Yes.
Okay. As long as they've got separate access, I don't have. Looks like there's one that there is. As long as it has access without going to that property.
You're worried about access to these buildings back here.
On Appendix A, number 4, it says approaches to the proposed parcels and remainder be built and located to county standards and approved by Public Works. That's one of the conditions, number 4.
Yes, that's one of the standard conditions, yes.
Right. Any other questions, concerns? Board's wishes? Amber?
I'll move that council approve subdivision application SD 2017-43 with the conditions noted in Appendix A of the planning report.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Other planning matters? Just a couple questions for staff. When you sell campsites, do you need subdivision?
Through the chair, you asked if there were subdivisions on it? No.
No. When you sell campsites, do you have to get subdivision of the
Through the
little
chair.
sites you're buying?
No. So from what I've seen, the campsite that was brought forward today for Oasis Grove, it's one individual property, and the lots are sold or leased, but they are not required to be subdivided out. If they were required to be subdivided out, that would be a totally different story, but it's not required. Campgrounds have that discretion, and we don't require it from the county and from planning that it needs to be subdivided out.
Okay. When they sell campsites in the county, do we like to be notified that that's what's going on?
Through the chair, it's a private interaction between the landowner of that campsite and the leasee who is interested in that. I know we have a property on Eagle Lake where we own the property, but we lease it out to another owner. I don't know what the process is for that, but at this time, we don't require that adjacent landowners are notified when a property is leased. It's not part of the planning process. It's not an application of any sort. It's just a monetary agreement between the campsite owner and the leasee who's interested in that site.
Okay.
So through the chair, then, to follow that up, the original application for that was for a campsite, but those are permanent campsites now. They're not overnights. Is there not a clause in camps when you apply for campsites as to whether or not it's an overnight or weekly, or you can't do a monthly rental or?
Through the chair, are we talking about the Oasis Grove right now, or are we talking about Eagle Lake?
Any campsite that we approve, if I remember right, when they come in with their application, they're saying that they aren't for long-term residents, they're not for winter, they're only for day use or week use. They can't lease them out for a month or a year, or isn't that part of a condition on the type of campsite?
It depends what conditions were put on the development permit at that point in time. And in my experience, sometimes they'll come back and request some changes because of a different business model or monetary issues, etc. So I'm not quite sure from the Oasis Grove perspective how that started in the beginning. That's the history that still is a bit messy. With Eagle Lake, the county owns Eagle Lake, and we have a tenant. But again, so those lots aren't sold. And it becomes a different issue if the lots are sold. Then you're looking at condominiumization, basically, of the land. It goes through land titles, etc. So then council and MPC would eventually be aware of those changeovers. But with the way that this campground, Oasis Grove particularly, is being set up, it's a master plan with a master DP. And what happens on the inside regarding ownership is put together by the owner, and it's nothing to do with the county because they're just leased, they're not sold.
Because that one, I'm thinking of the one over in Rosebud. That's strictly overnights, weekend type camping there. And I thought that was part of the condition when it was put in place.
Through the chair, so in our current land use bylaw, the one that's most recent, we have major and minor campgrounds listed in the regulations. And for the major campground, it does state that it can be all year, but that doesn't mean that they can stay there all year. It's that you come and go all year, so not necessarily permanent residency. We definitely we stated that to the owner, that this is what it's stating, not that you can have someone living there all year round as a permanent tenant. That's not the intent of a campground, and especially in our eyes for the land use bylaw. As well as part of the application itself for a major campground, they do have to state their hours of occupancy, how many workers are there, what the seasonal plans are for the site. So in this case, they stated that the summer is the busiest time of the year, and the winter, although there are people who occasionally do come in, they are not there permanently. They're there and they have to provide their own potable water. So that was listed in quite in a lot of detail within their letter of intent, explaining everything. That's a standard process for a development permit of that nature, is to request all those details so we understand what the campground is doing, as well as meeting the requirements of the land use bylaw.
Through the chair, however, from a day-to-day practical basis, it's incredibly difficult to monitor and then enforce what is going on in these campsites regarding who's staying there, for how long, etc. Through the planning process, we did discuss this at through the planning team. We do have some major concerns regarding what could happen at Oasis Grove, for example, and any other additional campsites that may come into the county, that it could be looked at as affordable housing, low-income housing. How do you monitor how long people are staying there? If I'm correct, Odessa, their original development permit does allow a portion of the campsite to remain open all year round. Exactly. Correct?
Like the original.
Yep. I think it does. So we do already have a problem with this campsite. And so moving forward, we're going to look at now enforcing more rigorously what has not been able to be enforced before, talking more with the adjacent residents, and then with Odessa, going back and discussing with the applicant what they want to do moving forward. But we'll definitely keep MPC in the loop as to what's going on.
Tom?
So is there a standard to build a new, like if I were to go in and build a campsite today and you guys and the county approved it, is there like, and I'm going to have on-site sewage collection and all that kind of stuff, is there a standard, like is there a standard of building code practice that a campsite needs to meet?
The problem with campsites is they're not standardized, right? So they may have a clubhouse, they may have a swimming pool, they may have a golf course, they may have multiple different things. So we have to approach each one as a unique development. Each one is different. We abide by all the provincial rules and regulations regarding portable water, health, etc. And if they come with a proper comprehensive plan, with everything met, fire code, building code, development permits, etc., full business plan to show that it can be economically successful. How are they going to split up the land? Are they going to condominiumize it? Are they going to lease it? It's very complex. I wouldn't say that there's any one particular great standard that I've seen so far. Every municipality struggles with campgrounds, and you just kind of have to bring them up to standard, the existing ones. Any brand new ones that would come in from a greenfield site, I would say to council that we would approach this in an entirely different manner with almost an area structure plan or area concept plan at the very least.
Okay, sorry. So how was the sewage collection on the new 64 lots? If they go there, was there a comprehensive plan on how they were going to run the sewage or pick up the sewage?
Through the chair, so in my report, I mentioned that we requested servicing plans from the applicant and landowner, and the intent was to have a pipe connecting all of the 64 lots and then having 2 holding tanks collect the sewage, and then they would be hauled off site by a private company. I think it was called Back Truck. That's currently the process that they use for the existing sites right now. Unfortunately, we don't have any permits for those ones because at the time we didn't issue them, but we are trying to make sure that those 64 were properly looked at to ensure that there weren't going to be any future issues for those new lots. So yes, we did have servicing plans, and in the conditions, we requested final plans to just show a bit more detail. Unfortunately, because it is on a private property, it's not connecting to municipal servicing, we aren't able to ask for extensively detailed plans because that's not within our jurisdiction. It would be just baseline to ensure that the slopes are insured and taken into consideration, and that, you know, there aren't any external issues that could potentially come up with the servicing for that site. Basically, we just want to make sure that we do our due diligence to ensure that anything they put in there is baseline okayed by the engineers.
Okay, so we'll address that if they come back in the future. Okay, we heard garbage and trespassing concerns. Can we start to address them with these owners?
Absolutely, we can address that through our own bylaw enforcement. I think we'll be contacting the RCMP regarding speeding and maybe liquor offences, that kind of thing. So we got a lot of information from the residents that came here today. What we didn't get through the planning process, even though we circulated twice, was a lot of written letters, etc. That was part of the issue, and that's understandable. Not everybody wants to put their concerns in writing, but we've got a lot of information that we can now follow up on from the enforcement perspective.
Okay, good. Donna?
So I think what we'll do is we'll approach this a little bit differently, and we'll do some reach out to the public now outside of the planning process for this application. The application is refused, but that doesn't mean that we can't hold some one-on-ones and our own workshops regarding residents' concerns with regards to this development that's in their neighborhood. So we can approach that separately now.
Yeah, and this being refused with conditions, that means it can be appealed by the applicant. Yes. Okay. We have a meeting to start at 11, so...
I just have one thing that wasn't brought up today is they actually started working. Is that going to be monitored too, so they don't...
Through the chair, yes, I briefly mentioned it, that there was enforcement involved because they had started stripping and grading for the 64 sites, and they'd already put in some of the septic piping for those 64 sites. So we did do enforcement on our end. And because now we know it's refused, we will definitely be keeping up to date on looking at them and taking a look and doing site visits to ensure that no further development. Otherwise, we would be required to do further enforcement as necessary.
Okay.
Just so MPC is aware, this could lead to a stop work order issue, which even though they appeal the refusal, we still have the right to move forward on our enforcement. So I wouldn't be surprised, because the adverts have already come out in the newspaper over the past few months regarding that this would be open this summer, which is why the planning department was pushed into a corner to bring it in to MPC as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks. Any other concerns? Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Carried. Oh, look at that, 11 o'clock. I'll call the order